Good afternoon and welcome to Practicing Self-Care. My name is Victoria and I'm with Achim and we are from Satori Self Development. Achim and I work as clinical hypnotherapists, providing therapy and coaching to individuals, couples and groups to enhance mental health and well-being. Practicing Self-Care presentation will be given by Achim, and the presentation will provide insights into the importance and the benefits of self-care. Thank you, Achim.
Thanks, Victoria. So welcome everyone for today's presentation. And I just run you through the program, what we will be covering. Obviously, the main topic is self-care and the practice of self-care. And before we do anything today, we will check in briefly, a brief meditation to just become present to what will be presented today. I'll give you some definitions on self-care, and I will also talk a few coping strategies and mind matters, because this is really the most important aspect about today's presentation. At the end, I continue to elaborate a little bit more on self-development, because self-care is really leading up to self-development, and we will close this presentation with a brief guided relaxation, but also providing time to reflect on what has been covered today. And hopefully, whatever we talk about here today is something you can retain for some time, and most importantly, put into practice. So let's just check in. And by that, what I would like you to do is just collect yourself, make sure you sit reasonably straight in your chair, letting go of any tensions in your neck, shoulder area, and just wiggle around a little bit just to get an idea what your physical condition is at this point in time, because quite often we carry tension in this area here. So just wiggle around, ease up a little. And then what I would like you to do is utilize your hands, your two palms, fingertips touching each other, and place the two hands in front of your chest. It is almost like a prayer position, but it is not a prayer. Just make sure they are in front of your chest. And I want you to make a connection with your eyes in the line of the nose, the tip of the nose, and the tip of your fingers. So while you are closing your eyes right now, just remain that line of connection, the head slightly tilted forward, and just breathe whatever comes natural to you. Whatever comes natural to you. You can breathe through your nostrils or through your mouth, it doesn't matter. And every time you are breathing out, just ease up a little bit more, letting go of any excess stress, residual tension, whatever it might be. Each time you are exhaling, let go of any busyness, mental busyness. It's almost like you are pushing any busyness, any activity out of your body, just to calm everything. Energizing on the inhalation and then calming down as you are gently breathing out. Keeping your focus on the tip of your nose, being attentive, breathing naturally, become present, become open and receptive to new ideas, new ways of looking at things, and let go of all the other things which are no longer required at this point in time. really letting go. You are here, present, nothing else matters. And becoming more and more open and receptive. Some information I'm going to provide you. Just take in a few nice, long, smooth, deep, relaxing breaths. Filling your lungs with oxygen, holding it maybe for a short time before releasing. Letting go. Let's do that a few more times until you hear the sound of the bell. And then be here, be present. Okay, let's continue to the next point. What is self-care? Self-care is basically anything you do and you can do to take care of yourself, of your state of health and well-being. Every contribution you can make. And that could be a matter of the food you eat, what you drink, how much, how little, whether you are utilizing physical activities to enhance your well-being, whatever it might be. And in general terms, self-care needs to be something which you do deliberately, which means it requires your conscious effort. It requires you to be present. It is not something which happens by accident. So, in other words, when you want to practice self-care, it becomes a the purpose of improving your state of health and well-being. And the fine skill over time, it is actually providing adequate attention to your needs and basically comply with appropriate physical, psychological activities which help you to stay consistent at a reasonably beneficial level of health and well-being. So this is important, adequate attention, which means you need to be present to what is happening. Every so often, a check-in pays great dividends because it tells you, how am I doing right now, this very moment? Am I feeling all right? What is it which feels a bit awkward in my body? What is it I could do right now to counter that? And when we talk about the mind, it's almost like the weather. It can change many times throughout the day, but the mind is even more active and it can change moment to moment, moment to moment. And it can be almost compared to an overcast weather pattern, like you see on the top right. And then glimpses of light are coming through and I seem to feel a little bit better again. And then everything lines up again. A nice blue sky. I feel 100%. However, the mind is really the place where we need to go in order to address our state of well-being first and foremost. If you don't do that, we get caught up in emotions. And that basically leaves us in a state where we are constantly experiencing uncertainty, self-doubt, and we are forever swaying between emotions, but also between approval and disapproval we get from third parties. It can be the person we share our life with. It can be a person at work who gives us a stamp of approval for work well done, but the next day it could be exactly the opposite. So we want to make sure that we become more consistent about the changes in our environment. And they come in many different ways. Otherwise, we actually are stuck in this kind of merry-go-round where we move from fear to trust, of not being certain about something. And that can lead to breakdowns in the way we communicate to each other, but it's also leading to a breakdown in the way we communicate to ourselves. Because every so often when you stop, you might become aware of the mind chatter. You are in a way talking to yourself. You may not do it out loud, but the internal mind chatter is consistent and is forever running. And when you pay attention to that, most of the times it probably has a kind of a negative connotation. And when you buy into that, there could be resentment, there could be anger, there's definitely a degree of unsettledness and fear, because this is a future-orientated process. You're always wondering what's happening next. How worse can it get? You're never really present, or you revert back to the past and ruminate about the past over and over again. I wish it could have been different. It's not a very, what we call, resourceful state. In fact, it's actually a state of being which keeps you depleted. So ideally, we would like to move away from that position. But before we do that, I will just elaborate a little bit more on the coping strategy you may have adopted without being fully conscious about it. So there can be all kinds of stressors, job uncertainty, or even uncertainties in the relationship, and so many other things. Uncertainties about your health. And it can lead to a state of rumination where you are forever wondering what is going on, what can I change, what if it was different, but it is not necessarily followed by any action. So you actually stay put. And with all these mental overload come physical tensions. So it makes you very rigid as a person. And you can feel it because it could develop in some muscle aches. And many people who have been stressed mentally normally also are stressed physically. And it can lead to chronic pain and so forth, or chronic fatigue. And then when you consider all the information we put or we take in these days, there's actually a constant information overload happening. We are on our mobile phones, we are watching television, we are looking at advertising, we are listening to the radio. It's endless. And many of us probably find ourselves in a position of multitasking by listening to something, visualizing something internally, seeing something physically, and still attending to a physical task at the same time. But do we really do a good job? Because we really divert our attention, our focus. So what's most a challenge here is our coping ability. Can we cope with that? Or are we coping in a rather poor manner? And that leads to what we call being reactive, impulsive. We make poor decisions as a result of what we are experiencing, because we are in a constant state of busyness, overwhelm, and our decision-making process is rather closed. And what I mean by that is we are not really becoming aware of the resources we have. We are not aware of utilizing our capabilities, which are within us. So there's a total oversight. And what happens? It just leads to more stress and anxiety. And in a way, and unintentionally, it confirms that whatever we are doing seems to be right, but it isn't. It just keeps us in this merry-go-round. So that's one coping strategy which can be described as reactive and leaves us in a state of depletion. Not very helpful and not allowing us to make any progress. So, 2,500 years ago, the Buddha, when he left the confines of the palace, living a rather sheltered life, and stepped for the first time on the streets, he found out that there's a lot of suffering. He saw old age, sickness, death, and so he figured there are many causes of suffering. And there are so many different levels of suffering. It doesn't matter whether you are poor, rich, it doesn't matter which profession you have. It's totally independent from that. There are always degrees of suffering. So he became curious about what can be done about this situation. Surely there must be an end to that, what he called the cessation of suffering. But how do I go about it? And he found out, after many years of self-exploration, one can call it self-development, that there is a path out of suffering. And that leads us to the Noble Eightfold Path. It's a kind of an attitude and conduct we can adopt to be more mindful about the way we live life, direct attention to our needs, practicing self-care. And with this degree of mindfulness, we also become aware of the needs of other people. So it's not a self-centered approach. It is actually an approach which has the intention to be the very best for yourself and for others. The Noble Eightfold Path is quite involved, but makes a lot of sense and basically caters for aspects of how do I make a living? Do I hurt anyone in making a living? Am I mindful enough to share what I know with others? Am I mindful enough to share with others what could prove to be of benefits to them? All what it's leading up to is that we need to start here at home with ourselves. Once we have a better understanding about ourselves, then we can take it a step further and be of support of others. And many people make that notion that the first thing they say when the question is asked, what are you caring for? The first answer would be my family. But when are you in the best possible position to care for your family? Probably when you are taking care of yourself. And that is where our responsibility kicks in as an individual. And we do have choices. We have options available to us to getting to know ourselves better. Making use of the resources, the potential skill sets we have, and develop as a person. One way of doing that is the approach with meditation. It can be a formal practice, it can be an informal practice, which means you can do it in a group, you can do it by yourself, you can do it with guidance, with instructions. The most important aspect about that is that we want to calm the mind, we want to bring down the busyness, get rid of the clutter, become actually clearer of what is there, hidden underneath the clutter. And that allows us to gain some insight, which is called vipassana or vipassana, about ourselves. What is actually going on with ourselves? And the basis for that is mindfulness. And mindfulness is nothing other than watching attentively of what is going on inside of us. What's going on with our mind? What are the motivations? What are the drivers But how do I respond to my inner self, what's presenting, and to others? How do I respond to the environment, the ever-changing environment? Most importantly, attention is paid to the here and now. So I have to be present in order to make judgment calls and decisions. What is the best thing to do? What's the best call of action right now? If I'm dreaming and I'm not attentive, highly unlikely that I'm in a position to do that. So it requires some degree of focus and concentration as well. A nice metaphor about that, the developing of meditation and the state of mind, is a lotus flower. So when the lotus flower is underneath the surface, the water surface, it's caught up in muddy waters. And when it first appears to the surface, the mud is still clinging on to the stem of the lotus flower. And over time, when it rains, the mud is washed off, and I see the stem for what it is. See the nice, beautiful lotus flower. And the mud resembles basically the impurities we have in our mind. So it takes some time for the lotus flower to rid itself of that mud. And it would take some time for us to rid ourselves of impurities. And we do that by practice, again and again and again. But another nice metaphor about the lotus flower is also when it storms and it's raining. So basically there are changes in the environment. It doesn't penetrate the lotus flower. The rain is washing off and basically doesn't penetrate. So what that means is when we are strong within ourselves, it doesn't matter what happens in the environment, we become resilient. And we can handle the situation on hand in the most appropriate manner. Now that requires self-development. And self-care is the starting point of that. As you remember, I covered the coping strategy number 1, which was called reactive. We are now changing over to a more responsive manner. And that means we need to put a stop to the stress and anxiety and basically adopt a different approach. And the approach I'm talking about today is meditation. First and foremost, I accept what is. Many times there's nothing we can do about the given situation. It is just what it is. I may as well accept it. It doesn't mean that I approve of it, but I accept it because there's nothing I can change about it. What I can change about it is my approach to the situation. So I observe what is going on. And once I get a better insight, I can make a call and redirect my attention to what is the best approach I can take to stay safe, still maintain my health and well-being, be still strong enough to be of support to others as well, and take it from there. So if I adopt a mindful approach, stay calm at the same time, and that allows me to actually become aware of the skills I already have, and I can fall back onto that skill set. It's almost like a treasure trove. It's always with us. But how many times do we actually dip into it and make use of it? How many times do we forget about it, that it is actually there with us? So the potential is always there. And when I become aware of the resources, and I can look back in the history of my existence and say, yeah, back then I utilized this and this. There's some evidence that there is something I can apply yet again because it's proven it has worked in the past. Let's apply it again. And it might just help. But it also allows me to stay curious, which means I'm not closing doors. I'm actually staying open to what else could happen, what else I could do and contribute and find out about myself. And that is the insight, gaining insight in a time of quietness, of inner reflection, and take it from there. So that would be a responsive action, which leaves me open, creative, and it actually leaves the doors open to ongoing improvement. So basically, what it says, it's a never-ending process. And for that matter, it's a never-ending progress. We can always improve. That doesn't mean I have to surrender to harsh self-criticism, saying, oh, I'm not good enough, or any of that. No, not at all. As long as I'm aware, there's still something I can do. So I have a more positive attitude, positive approach. So let's move on to the next slide. And this pyramid shows us a very nice hierarchy of what self-care and self-development is all about. Because ultimately it leads me to what is my purpose in life and what needs to be aligned in my life in order to achieve that purpose. It pays dividends to step out of the busyness of everyday living every so often and just stop. Take a breath. Observe what presents, but also observe to how am I doing within myself. Just let the clutter at the outside and let's make some time for inner self-reflection. Even if it's just 5 minutes a day. You always find 5 minutes, 10 minutes in your daily routine and can make that time. It's not a big deal, really. But I have to do it with intention, with purpose. And every time you do that, you actually practice physical and mental self-care. You take care of your body and of your mental state. You are giving back to what your body is delivering 24/7 without fail. So we can make a contribution that continues by acknowledging what our body and our mind is doing for ourselves. We do it in a mindful manner and be mindful about the practice we adopt. And what it does, it raises our self-awareness. It means it raises our self-awareness of our needs. And at the same time, it raises the awareness of the needs of others. It is literally impossible to separate self-awareness for self and self-awareness for others. They go hand in hand. So that's a nice byproduct of practicing mindfulness, meditation, for example, because it comes with so many associated benefits. It's also very important to allow ourselves to become clear on what are our beliefs, what are actually our values, and are they aligned with the everyday behavior I show, with the way I act, with the way I take action, with the way I talk. The more self-aware I become, the easier it is to align beliefs and values and make them congruent with the behavior, with the way I communicate to individuals, to myself. That's a big, big step in the right direction. There are too many of us who have certain beliefs and values, but they bypass the step of utilizing capabilities and their resources, so they are not quite clear on how to go about things. And that normally is displayed when an inner conflict conflict arises, or I have conflicts with other people, and it seems to be a never-ending experience. That is a clear sign that my alignment is not quite there. And of course, if we work more from the reactive side, the impulsive side of life, then of course, every time there's a change in the environment, it gives me reason to be impulsive about it and react to it, rather than stop for a moment, be more considerate, become aware of my resources, what I can do, and then basically respond to the new situation in a most appropriate way. So that is the idea of self-care and self-development, to have a proper alignment and purpose. It's not happening overnight, it's consistent work, but it's very rewarding. And it's very enlightening because it's a lot you can find out about yourself. So, having said that, as a summary, self-care is basically what you do, what you can do to ensure your psychological, emotional, physical, and spiritual well-being. Staying present to your needs and address your needs when required, rather than procrastinate. You know when something is not quite happening for you. So make the time, observe, figure out what can I do. Maybe I ask someone for help. There are so many options available. Self-care is definitely a practice of prevention. It protects you. It protects your health and well-being. And by protecting you, it protects others because they don't have to be too concerned about you because you are already practicing and implementing. So they can ease up. And we see too many times that people get stressed about other individuals because they are just concerned about them and see what they do or what they not do. Self-care definitely enriches your life experience because it's a proactive approach. You make a contribution to the society, and it allows you to be content with yourself, with who you are. You are unique. There's only a one-off. There's no need to make any comparisons. You are good the way you are. Be content with what you have. And if you need to tweak something, self-care is a great way to start. And it's definitely, apart from what has been said already, an enjoyment to live life and participate in life more fully, more fully. So, this is leading up to self-development, aligning your core values with your beliefs, and have that reflected in the actions you take, in your behavior, in the way you speak, communicate, in everyday living. Ultimately, it allows us to arrive at home because the quality of awareness increases, and it's cultivating love for us as we are, basically approving of ourselves, accepting ourselves without any blame or criticism, self-acceptance. That is where we arrive, arriving home. And mindfulness is one aspect which can take us there, because mindfulness is minding our mind, an essential part of self-care. So I would like to bring this presentation to a conclusion by having another brief meditation. And Also allowing for time to absorb what has been presented. And what I would like you to do is place one palm of your hands on your chest and the other palm maybe just above the belly button. Closing your eyes and just become aware of your breathing for the time being. Again, it doesn't matter whether you are breathing through your nostrils or through your mouth. And gently closing your eyes, just wiggling around, making sure you are sitting straight. Just taking in some soothing breath. Being present to your breathing. Now in a moment, I want you to shift your awareness to your diaphragm, which is just below the rib cage. And each time you are breathing in, this diaphragm is pushing down and let your belly inflate and expand. Really let your belly inflate and expand as you're breathing in. And then let it deplete again as you're breathing out. On the in-breath again, the diaphragm moves down, belly is expanding. And then on the out-breath, belly is depleting. Eyes closed. Just give yourself a nice, gentle massage by using the diaphragm, because you actually do massage your internal bodily organs. You're also getting more air into the lower parts of your lungs. Just feeding back to yourself some loving care to the heart center. Arriving through the palm to the heart. And experience the calming in the belly with the other palm just there. Keeping it all contained. Just allowing yourself to absorb what has been presented. Let it sink in. Let your mind archive whatever has been of importance to you. And some of you may even reflect already on things you may want to consider to shift or change. Just go with the flow. No restrictions required. Free flow of breath. Free flow of thoughts. Every time you are breathing out, just relaxing. Just relaxing. Letting go of any stresses, any tensions, any stresses, any tensions. Then just following the flow of the breath with your mind, how it's entering the nostrils or your mouth, running all the way through the throat, filling your lungs, expanding the belly again, and then letting go on the out breath. And perhaps you can extend the out breath a little bit more than the in breath. And by doing so, you are promoting the relaxation response of the body. Staying relaxed, at ease, eyes gently closed, and just following your breath. Staying present, calm, and relaxed. Absorbing all the information and let it settle where it needs to settle, wherever it sits best. Just taking a few more breaths, maybe 5, 10 more breaths, until you hear the bell again. And that will conclude our presentation today. I hope you enjoyed it and can take something away from here. And bear in mind, the practice and the intention is most important for practicing self-care. I thank you very much for your attention today and wish you all the very best. And hopefully there's another way we will catch up in the future and perhaps even get to see each other in person. Thank you very much.